welcome everyone. So I'll introduce myself super quickly. My name is Chantel St. Clair. I'm the Director of Marketing for Songtrust and Downtown Music Publishing. I've been with Downtown for about 6.5, almost 7 years now. And if you're not sure what Songtrust is, maybe you're brand new to it, we're a music publishing administrator that helps songwriters and labels and managers and businesses monitor their songs, register their songs, and collect royalties wherever it's earning around the world. And in addition to that, we try to do things like this where we provide educational experiences so you can learn more about music publishing and music business. So that's why we're here today. So welcome everyone. And I just want to take a moment to welcome our panelists. Thank you all for taking the time to be here today and share your experiences and your thoughts with us. I'm going to let each of you introduce yourself quickly, and I'm just going to kind of go around on my screen. So Tiéce, if I can start with you, just a little bit about you, what you do now, whatever you want everyone to know.
Thank you, Chantel. Hi, everyone. I'm Tiéce. I'm the founder of Snap and Boom, which is an artist development agency. I'm based in the UAE. I'm also founder of the B-Side, which is a women in music community. And I come from a background in live music events and gradually moved over to more working on the recorded side and working with developing artists. That's me in short.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. We're going down next is Velu.
Thank you, Chantel. Hi, everyone. I'm Velu Ochoa. I am based in the Washington, D.C. area, and I do a lot of different things. I'm part of a collective of women called La Marvela. They do music here, very well-known local band. But I also work with MIXIT as an artist development person there. Just recently started, and I have a bunch of other hats, but I've been in the music industry for about 10 years. And I'm really excited to be here to share my experience.
Thank you. And Stephanie. Oh, sorry, I think you're muted. There we go.
I'm sorry. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Santiago-Rolón. I am from Corozal, Puerto Rico. I mainly work in the Latin urban market. And I have been in the music industry for about the last 10 years. I started within Univision and Telemundo as my beginnings in entertainment. I am the Latin consultant for the Mechanical Licensing Collective, the MLC, and have been part of a number of different cohorts, such as the cohort with Google, Next Gen Tech Policy Leaders, and I do D&I for Pinterest as part of their Inclusion Insiders. And very excited to be here with all of these ladies today.
Thank you. That's so exciting. Pinterest too. Love that. Awesome. Well, thank you all again for being here. I think the best way to kind of start this out is just if you could all go around and say a little bit about what inspired each of you to get into the music industry. And maybe as like a secondary part of that, have you seen the industry evolve in terms of supporting women and artist development? Tiéce, can we maybe start with you?
Sure. So what inspired me, it's going to sound very cliche, but I think it was my love for music that initially got me interested in kind of working in the music industry. And then as I got deeper into it, I realized there was this representation issue when it came to women, different ethnicities. And so I really wanted to kind of get involved so I could tackle that and kind of see how I can contribute to making the industry a better place for artists, executives, for everyone who wants to be within the music industry. So that's where Snap and Boom kind of came in, because I thought, all right, I want to develop artists and help the DIY sector, but I also want to make sure that if I'm helping them have sustainable, transparent, and fair opportunities as well. So that's where I'm at with the industry. And then as I've kind of been in the industry for 12 years now, I've seen a lot more conversations and discourse happen around women and the treatment and opportunities that we're given. So I feel we're moving in the right direction. I don't think we're fully there yet. I see a lot more platforms being created for women to be able to speak. I see more opportunities coming up, but I still feel we have quite a bit of work to do when it comes to like payment, for example, to make sure women are still paid the same amount as our male counterparts. So I feel the evolution has been happening, but I think we still got some work to do. And I think having panels like this and different opportunities is definitely the right way to go. And with artist development, I feel it was always, a lot of people, when I say I do artist development, a lot of people say, oh, you do A&R. And I'm like, similar, but not quite, because I feel with artist development, it's more of a more holistic approach in some ways. And I feel now it's a lot more accessible to the DIY market, whereas before I felt it was very gate kept. And I feel there's been a really positive evolution in that sense. I do feel there still needs to be more emphasis on what artist development is and how artists can really benefit from it, because I do feel it can be overlooked. And especially when you're in the DIY market as well, you kind of think, well, what do I need to do to develop? So I do feel, having those resources available to artists in the DIY section, even those who are signed to labels and more established, I think development is essential throughout everyone's career. But yeah, I feel so the evolution, I feel it's happening in artist development, but again, we still got lots of work to do, but in a good way.
Yeah. I mean, things are always evolving and growing and iterating. So of course there's always going to be room for change, but it's good to see that you've had a positive experience and seen it move in a positive direction. Stephanie, do you have the same experience or is it a little different?
Yeah, definitely the same experience. I guess it's just one of those things where you see like that gender gap. And it's like, man, what's going on, within TV, I feel like you see a lot of females on the forefront of like TV, like, reporters and things like that. So when I got into the music space, I actually started doing like a lot of videos and like production. So when I would get on the production, like, to the scene of production, it was like, oh, the artist would be like, oh, you're the model. And I'm like, no, I'm not the model. I'm the one who actually told the models where to come and what time to get here and what to wear, so it was like a lot of just trying to educate people on this is who I am. And yes, I'm a female in the music industry and this is my role, because people weren't used to seeing, I guess, people aren't still used to seeing females in certain quote unquote authority roles or whatever, or decision making roles. And it was really frustrating. But I didn't allow that to kind of dictate anything in my life. I was like, I want to make sure that I want to educate. I want to make sure that these people are able to see more females like that. I feel like one of my main focuses yes, it's been artist development, but it's also like developing other females to be in these positions as well. Because I think one of the main things that I was seeing also was, oh, you could be a model, you could be a publicist, and those are very, very important things within the industry. And but I wouldn't really see a female manager. I wouldn't really see a female really in the forefront of certain things. And that's what I wanted to change. I wanted to be able to have people see more females within these roles. I didn't have like a lot of female mentors, and so when I found certain females within the scene, that I'm like, okay, like this lady right here, I need to like know exactly how it is that her experience has been. Like Delia from BMI, that used to be at BMI back in the day, like she was somebody that for me, Delia Oruela, like she was somebody for me that I looked up to her like heavy, and still to this day, different females within the industry that I said, okay, these are the role models that we need for females that want to get into the female and into the industry. And also just being that other that person that even throughout like artist development, it is a very nurturing role. So throughout that time, like I feel like the female within that role, it has to be somebody that can nurture this development of not just, kind of like how she was saying, like it's not just music, you're developing personalities, you're developing people into better people. Like you're developing them into, learning how to even, I don't want to say speak, but speak in a certain type of way, you know, media training and things like that. So it's been a journey, but I'm excited to continue learning. And I think that's one of those things that's important. It's just opening up ourselves to continuing to learn for better artist development throughout the years.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned a lot of education happening both on your side, but also educating those that you're around. Like, these are not just stereotypical women roles. These are women can be in other roles. They should be in all the roles, right? There should be a mix. And that's, again, it's great to see that you're having a positive experience, but it's all been tough, right? Like, we've had to go through different experiences to get where we are. Velu, has it been the same for you? Have you had a different experience?
No, I mean, it's pretty much along the same lines as Stephanie and Tiéce. I mean, I'm gonna talk more from the performance and an artist. So aside from La Marvela, I actually started with a first band called District of Columbia. I'm from Colombia, I forgot to mention that. And I'm the only woman there, and I'm the lead vocalist, but I also do everything in terms of booking, everything in terms of like the graphics. So I am, like the reason why we get gigs, and the reason why we have a social media presence, and the reason why we do all these things. And so like I'll just give you, like a funny example of that. My name is, like if you don't know, people usually assume that it's a man's name. And so I've actually used that to my advantage because, like people really respond to me fairly quickly, or more, I don't know, just a different way. But there was one time that we were at a show here at the Cherry Blossom Festival, and the person that was in, I guess, in the sound went and started talking to one of the guys, assuming that they were the ones who knew what was up, and they're like, "Oh, you're Velu?" "No, I'm actually Velu." And, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that you were," So it has shifted a lot, but you still see some of those experiences here and there. But in terms of, I mean, I had to say we're lucky enough that at least the community of people in Washington, D.C. are really trying to at least support women, and there are organizations that are trying to support women singers, women performers. But again, there needs to be more spaces, and it's there needs to be spaces where we can all learn to work together, and to like not only just say, hey, this is only a female or women only space, but it's also a space where everyone can listen to each other and like really support each other up. So I'm a true believer that yes, I mean, there needs to be those spaces, but it's also an opportunity for non-women. Like we also need to provide those opportunities for non-women to learn why, like diverse voices actually like bring a much more a better and more rich experience in terms of music. And so I've seen it, like there's definitely, like, from 10 years ago until now, there has been a change, but we still need to continue to do more.
Yeah, there's always more to be done. Well, that's great. That's great to hear. I think from my perspective too, I've had a good experience in the music industry. I've thankfully and been able to work under a lot of female leadership, which is great. Like Songtrust in the marketing department, we've had a lot of female leadership, which is really cool. But it's nice to see that happening in more areas, especially those areas that were so typically like male dominated, like managers and the heads of labels and whatnot. So kind of shifting away and more into kind of the development for artists. Tiéce, I'd love to ask you, but of course, if anybody has anything to contribute, please feel free to do as well. But how do you approach creative development for artists in a way that balances their artistic vision and the demands of the industry? Because I can imagine that could be a little bit tough.
Yeah, it can be quite a challenge, actually, I think. And that's what I love about the artist development side of it, is that you're working with the artists on, like I said, the holistic approach. So you really want them to understand the business side too. So my approach is usually trying to get them to understand the business, to look at what trends are, but not to get fixated on it, because I do think that can be quite a downward hole for a lot of artists. If they see trends, they think they have to follow it, and they start to lose their authenticity. So for me, I like to kind of give artists the opportunity to understand the business, see what the landscape's like, and then kind of balance that by looking at who they are as artists, what their story is, like what's their narrative, how do they identify, like what are they trying to convey in their music and just the way they are, and then balancing that out, kind of making sure that they kind of compromise and meet. So it's not, oh, you can only be one or the other, but it's like, how do you understand both, and you bring both of those into, merge both of those into your kind of world and into your creative bubble. So that's kind of my approach in short. You know, it's a lot more, I can go into detail and go on and on about how I do it, but I do like to make sure that artists are, you know, I'd never want them to comprise their actual identity and who they want to be as artists, but I do feel it's important that they understand how their artistry fits into the landscape, and you know, how they can navigate it according to who they are and how they, you know, how they strive. And I think business, understanding business is essential if you're going to be, especially especially coming from the DIY perspective. You know, I work a lot with DIY artists, so I'm coming looking focus on that, and I do feel they need to understand the business, because if you're going to get into music, essentially it is a business, you know, and you have to sell your creativity. And so I think it's important. So for me, it's about kind of helping artists understand it. And I know when you say to a lot of artists, especially, or just creative people in general, oh, business, they think admin, oh gosh, how boring. How,
Over.
yeah, like I don't want to do that. Manager, get me a manager, you know, like, and
Right.
so I know it can be quite you know, it can trigger some anxiety, I think, for some when you talk to them about the business. But so for what I try to do is try to get them to understand the business from a more interesting, exciting perspective, you know, in a way that they understand, actually this is you protecting your IP, this is you making sure that, you know, you're set, so once you do get into a space where you're ready to go, you feel protected and you know what you're doing, and you're not going to make this great music and the next thing you realize you don't own that music, or you know, you're not making money from it the way you could be making it. So I do think it's important when approaching it is to kind of make sure that they do understand this is the not so exciting side of it, but you have to understand this, but this is how you can be you and put the two together.
I mean, if you're going to do this full time, right, you're the business, like your music career is a business. It has to be sort of understood, at least minimally, in that way, so that you can make really informed decisions about your business, your career as you're going on. Do you kind of tie that in together with their goals and aspirations, as well as like what you know is realistically available for their music or them as an artist in the industry?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, I will never be that person to tell someone their dreams are not attainable. You know, I think everyone can dream and everyone can reach their goals. It's just the path that how they get there is, you know, that's where I'll kind of intervene and go, okay, this is where you want to be. But at the moment, maybe the route you're taking isn't necessarily going to get you there. Let me help you kind of reroute so you can get there, you know, the right way, the ethical way, or, you know, just using the right standards, making sure that you're, again, set and prepared for anything that may come. So yeah, I think it's important, again, not to shut a dream down, but to also kind of manage expectations.
Sure, absolutely. And you kind of mentioned like having to set those expectations with those virality moments that are happening in the industry, like something pops off and then everyone wants to jump onto that trend, but it might not be what's best for you. So kind of talking about the digital landscape, Stephanie, how do you help artists define and build their brands to stand out in today's society, like digital landscape, but also without investing too much time and energy in those like small, like the dangling, you know, wins that might not actually take them to their next step or to the goal that they're trying to achieve? How do you balance that?
So I mean, an artist like brand identity differentiates like that artist from the millions of artists that there are like within the landscape, right? And everybody has like that uniqueness. The cool thing about us being here is that there is nobody else that is like you. And I feel like that's one of the main things that I kind of start off when I speak to somebody, you know, that can maybe be in their like beginning, like develop, you know, what do you like to do, what are your favorite colors, like just different little things like that may sound a little like regular, you know, you're kind of figuring out if this relationship is going to work, right?
Your
So
profile.
just right, it feels like it's a relationship, really. You know, that's what you're building with this person. To be able to tell the story, you have to know all those little like nicks and knacks that you know that they like. So it's important to like know the niche, and within like defining that particular niche of the head, and like, let's say that I like, I don't know, one of the artists that, and for example, that I work with, her name is Noemi. She has a unique physical brand identity, curly hair, and this is completely shaved off, you know. And so whenever we do things with her, one of the main things that I love to do is getting in tune with different barbers in whatever city that we're in. So barbers, even though she's a female, is part of her brand identity, because she's a female that needs to get her hair done. Either it's going to be her curls or it's going to be her braids. And then we also got to go ahead and go attend the barber side, right? So we go ahead and get with different barbers within whatever city that we're going to, be it in Colombia, be it in, you know, we're in Miami, you know, we have like our go-to barbers, right? And that's part of her brand, that's part of her brand identity. So from there, it's how is it that we go ahead and like reach that community of hair and reach that community of barbers, right? So, you know, or people that like that, or girls that also have the side of their hair shaved, because she's gotten people that have hit her up and be like, hey, look what I did, you know? And either they've shaved like a little bit at the bottom. There's one girl in particular from Cuba that got it all shaved on the side, just like her. And you start creating like, you know, that identity, right? Hers is a little bit out there, you know, it's a little bit different, you know, she went ahead and like shaved the side of her head. But whenever people talk about her, it's like, oh, that girl that has this side of her head shaved.
She's
You
like,
know, there's a certain brand identity to her, and like already, you know. And then so you kind of like start getting that even that niche market of like brands that you even start hitting up to be able to do collaborations with, in order to you know, continue telling that story. And not too long ago, you know, she decided to, for like one of the first times, like do a curly cut. She had never done a curly cut. She doesn't love doing her hair, you know, that type of thing. She got a curly cut for the first time. She did a middle part, so you know, you
oh,
could
wow.
see her hair like luscious. And we had an event, and a lot of people were like, oh my God, like I was looking for your shaved head. You know, so like throughout the entire time, people were just kind of like, what, like I know you for your shaved head, you know. And that's just, it starts becoming part of like her brand identity throughout. And pretty much like the audience starts to really like look for that, you know. So when you kind of change it up, I know she always says that one day she's gonna go ahead and shave it all off. So I'm like,
You're
within the
prepared.
process of artist development, we're gonna get there, just not now, but we're gonna pull a Britney, and you know, pretty soon. But you know, it's part of that. You start building that brand identity. You start building you know, how people like start knowing you for it. Like they know her for her tattoos, they know her for, you know, this side shaved, the either, you know, sometimes when it's colored, like, you know, we start doing color on this side, or different types of designs depending on what's going on. If we're doing something with a brand, you know, we have them sponsor even like the color that we're going to do, you know, so it could go ahead and match with the actual brand that we're doing the sponsorship with. So all of that, it's like mixing, you know, it's mixing her brand identity with maybe like another major brand that we might be doing something with. And, you know, people just kind of like really gravitate to like telling that side of the story, which is part of what you know, we did while there was that artist development going on.
It sounds like as part of the authenticity of your artists, like it's finding out what really matters to them or who they are as an individual, and then capitalizing on and leveraging that to build out their brand niche, instead of like jumping onto a trend that maybe is more reflective of another person or another group of people. building your own. I feel like that's such a smart way of doing it. And it's like, I come from a psychology background. So to me, I'm like, ooh, that's like totally like learning about a human being and like what drives them, and like really making sure that you're investing time and energy into like what matters to them. Yeah, thinking outside of the box. Someone said that. That's a great way of thinking of it.
And even just like telling the story, because like the story of her hair came, you know, prior to her even being an artist, you know. So there's definitely psychology behind, you know, the story of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
One day that she just decided, like before work, going to Avis and Budget every day, she was like, so yeah, so definitely a story behind that. And it's just that consistency of like, you know, the psychology, right? Like you're saying too, of teaching the story of who is this artist, you know, because somebody with some hair like that, like a style like that, like I don't know if I could do that, you know what I mean? So it talks about their story as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Velu, from an international perspective, how do you see digital platforms impacting the way artists develop their careers? And is it different from kind of what you've seen like locally versus those global markets?
I mean, I think for both global and international markets, digital spaces are a huge opportunity for you to build an audience. I mean, you see them in like, you know, examples for like Karol G or Shakira, right? You know, like they got into a point where they can reach millions and millions of people, but that is also the same for someone that is a little more localized. And just what Stephanie was saying, it's about finding that unique treat that you can show those audiences so that they can start, oh, you know, like picking an interest on you. Because as Stephanie said before, you know, there's just millions and millions of artists that are out there. So you have to, you know, you can't overlook development, you can't overlook your brand. And so you have to really look within and see, okay, you know, like what are some of those things that that make me unique and that I can monetize and use to my advantage so that I can start building an audience. So I think, you know, like for both international and local artists, you know, like it's just a really good way of starting to show their art. And there are ways that you can jump on a trend, but you just have to, you know, like you just have to see like what is the lens that I'm going to be showing on that trend, and maybe that particular. But there's just like so many trends happening all the time that you can choose and then decide like what are some of the ways that I can tell my story using this trend, and perhaps this one doesn't work, but this other one works for me.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Are there any specific challenges or maybe opportunities in an artist doing a type of global expansion that maybe the local markets might not experience?
I mean, well, if you're gonna do in terms of global, it's a little bit more intricate than that, because depending on where you are, depending on the audience that you want to reach, you know, every country is different. You know, like you might be, you know, if you might be interested, for example, in America, you might be looking at things that might be working there. If you're looking into expand in Europe, you know, like think about what are some of the things that are actually like going to be working there. And also perhaps think about what are some of the artists or, you know, collaborators that I can reach out to those so that I can do some sort of collaboration again. And so that, you know, like I'm able to reach the audience that it's already there. So it's kind of, you know, like figuring it out a way that you can play around with the things that are already available. And so see that, you know, I mean, that's the great thing of having those digital markets and digital platforms already set up, so that, you know, it's just a matter of like, okay, sitting down, doing your homework, and what are some of the things that I can take advantage of right now and that are going to be useful for my brand and for my music.
Right. Yeah, I was actually going to ask, would you suggest, you know, that artists sit down, they do a little bit of, you know, that pre-work before jumping in, or should they, you know, is there any upside, I guess, to just jumping in and like learning as you go?
So I think it's a little bit of both. you can do a lot of testing. So it, like the way I see it is jumping and go is testing. For me, is testing. And even if you already have like a setup idea of how your identity works in a digital platform, there are things that are not going to be working anymore at some point. So you have to be ready to really try new things. But I think it's also important to, like really sit down and say, okay, like doing the research, what's happening, like what's working right now. Maybe, like the content or the things that I was doing 3 months ago are not really working anymore. Why? So let me look into it and see, like, can I adjust a little bit without necessarily saying that you're going to be completely switching your identity, but just tweaking some things here and there so that you can stay, like relevant.
Absolutely. So
I want
oh yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
I just wanted to add on that too. Sometimes especially artists, they want to really like be known where they're from. And I think that's one of the things that is sometimes could be a challenge, right? Because sometimes your hometown isn't gonna really gravitate to you until you come back when you made it. And they're like, I known that girl since she was 16 doing shows at the local speakeasy, Unfortunately, that's sometimes how it is. And so I think it's also important to like, part of that research that she was speaking on is that it's a conversation on it's okay if you don't see your hometown as one of these top 5 countries.
Yeah.
And the conversation on like if it's popping in Alaska and we got to go to Alaska,
Go to Alaska.
that we're gonna go ahead and make it happen where your brand identity, obviously, if at for some reason is mixing with the culture of certain people in Alaska, and let's figure out why. I can give you an example of an artist that he was part of the Marines before, and there was one of his top areas, if I'm not mistaken, it was like Salt Lake. And in Salt Lake there is a base. And so he was like, "Oh, it's because there's a base in Salt Lake." I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, let's go ahead and do certain things where we could do something with the Marines, And that's part of like understanding like how how your brand can, even in Utah where you had no, like, I don't know how many Latinos are in Utah, but obviously there's Latinos listening to him in Utah, and it must be from the base, so it's just kind of understanding that, what, like, at least in Puerto Rico, there's a lot of artists from Puerto Rico that they want to sound heavy in Puerto Rico, but you know what, like, you're going off right now in maybe Colombia or Alaska. Like, we got to go ahead and focus on those areas, and that's just what it is. And don't get mad, we'll get back to our homeland, and we can definitely continue doing things that we can that can happen in in the homeland and whatever, and that's cool. But it's just understanding that if your fans are in these random places that you would have never thought they would be in, let's gravitate to those. Let's continue working to build that fan base, because if you gonna do your first sold out in Alaska, are gonna
go where the people are.
You know what I mean?
And honestly, that happens a lot. I mean, like like you never make it in your hometown until you actually like go out and then build an audience somewhere else, and then they love you.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just look at Lisa. I mean, she built an audience in Brazil, and like all of a sudden she just went boom. So, and who knew that a Dutch Iranian woman was going to be able to do that?
Yeah.
In Brazil.
It is really taking those little bits of information that you get from the various tools you're using or the team that you have and piecing them together and connecting them back to your goals too. Because if your goal is to be big in your hometown, that's a great goal to have, but it doesn't necessarily need to be the first goal that you have. Like, that's something that maybe long-term you're working towards, or, things like that. So, but speaking of the sort of the obstacles that artists sometimes have to overcome, what do you all see as maybe the biggest challenges for emerging artists when it comes to career growth, and how can they overcome that? Tiéce, I'd love to start with you.
I think we're going to touch on what we've just been discussing, is really cutting through the noise and like having your uniqueness, and how do you keep it and push through, you know? And sometimes a uniqueness can be considered a niche. A niche can be quite hard to push, as we see, you know, as we have seen and continue to see. So I do feel that's a challenge for a lot of artists of kind of saying, okay, how can I still be my true self? How can I, you know, and I've seen someone ask a question about their image and how important is image.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think it's very important, but it goes hand in hand with your music. You know, it should complement your music as well. And so it's about how do artists find these two elements, put them together, and navigate through to where they can cut noise, where they can, because it's a busy market now, especially now, you know, anyone can kind of make music on their own and upload it. It's a lot, the gatekeeping's still there, but it's still a lot more accessible now to kind of have your music out there and to push yourself as an artist without having to have the label backing you. So it's super busy. So I do feel that's a challenge a lot of artists are likely to face. And the ones that I work with, I know that they do face that challenge too, you know, kind of like, how am I going to get heard? How do I find my market? You know, how can I be me, make my music and still, and like, you know, like Velu was saying as well, tweaking things to kind of still like to be adaptable and to be able to still kind of fit with what's happening, because you don't want to be behind trends, but you don't want to fall too much into it where you just blend in. But it's kind of like, how do you take all of that, juggle it, and then push through? So I think that's definitely a challenge that a lot of artists that I've come across are facing at the moment.
Yeah, that can make sense. And also maybe like being a little bit flexible to make those shifts when something isn't working the way you thought it would or wanted it to, and not getting hung up on why is it not working, and just being like, all right, this is the next thing. Let me just move. Let's see if this will move the needle. Stephanie, do you see anything different, or are you seeing a lot of the same things?
Yeah, really a lot of the same things too. You know, whenever I speak to like artists that are starting off from like literally the beginning, one, I guess like a funny thing that I kind of do is, what are your addictions? Like, I want to know what your addictions are. I want to know what you spend money on, you know, like, is it going to the store and like buying a whole bunch of like, you know, dumb stuff like gum, Cheetos, like
Spending in general, right? The ad hoc spending.
Yeah, like certain spending. And then I'm like, okay, so how many times do you do that? Oh, okay. And oh, you love to smoke. Okay, well, how can we go ahead and like pull it back? So that way, when you say that you don't have any money for like ads, not even $20, like let's go ahead and like at least $20 we can go ahead and put into like a quick little ad on Instagram or something like that, even if it's $5. Like, let's just do that and see how we can, it could take another course, you know? So I kind of start with like, what are your addictions, you know?
What
And
are those possible areas you're gonna get stuck in?
yeah, it turns into a funny conversation, and I'm that one person that tries to get everybody off vapes and cigarettes, but um, so I'm like, you know, how much money do you spend like on this? Okay, well, the $20 that you spend on this, like, and sometimes they're like, oh, weekly or whatever, something as simple as, but you know, I'm like, okay, well, let's go ahead and if you can maybe one of those days that you don't have to, you know, you don't spend on that, let's go ahead and put it into an ad, or let's go ahead and put it into something else that we can, you know, then in turn really like start investing and knowing how to start investing into your career. And so that way they're not spending it on just random things that they really shouldn't be addicted to. So
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a challenge can definitely be like, where are artists investing their time and money in, and making sure that if you want to do this full time, like you're gonna have to make some sacrifices. Like you said, maybe you got to give up smoking, and that money now can go towards your ad budget for, you know, your upcoming album, or not. That's a really interesting approach, and a challenge that I definitely would not have thought of. Velu, have you had any different problems or challenges that you've seen, or are they kind of similar to the other two?
I mean, I think it comes to time and money. And I am a true believer that you know, like there are some people that do this full time, but there are others that are trying to monetize other ways so that they can invest all their money into the music. So to me, it's kind of not getting overwhelmed, but knowing that, as Thais mentioned, knowing the business part, it's incredibly important, even if you have a manager, even if you have someone that helps you, because, you know, like, let's put it this way, you know, a president, a CEO, somebody that is up there is going to know how something works so that they know what direction they want to go into. But to me, it's like not getting overwhelmed, especially if you're an independent artist, because there are a lot of things that you have to do. So, you know, like learning to organize yourself. I think, you know, at least here in the United States, you know, I recently just opened my LLC, and that's been a huge like time saving for me, because then I can just all of the money that I am doing, you know, like through social media to digital to music, you know, like to collaborations, I am putting all of that into my LLC, and I'm using that to invest. But then again, like Stephanie said, also trying to figure out what are some other ways that I can cut off my expenses so that I can use that for ads, to promote things, to promote my music, to maybe to promote a show. All of those things are important. So sort of just knowing, organizing myself, breathe, you know, because there are a lot of things. Sometimes I'm like, I have so many things going on that I really I have to like pause and like breathe again, and then just keep going. And I think, you know, like we tend to forget a lot about mental health. So, you know, like really look within and really listen to yourself. Like, do you need a moment to breathe? Like, are you gonna go and, you know, like book all these shows like back to back to back, or are you gonna be able to do that? You know, I'm not. You know, I'm a mom too, so I know when I can take a break, and, you know, when I have to pause. So I think just knowing yourself a little bit more, not only for your brand, but also for your mental health and self-care, and understanding all the intricacies of business, music, and organizing yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And I love the call out to mental health. I'm a big mental health advocate as well. And so is Songtrust. So definitely I agree, like taking that moment to understand like when is too much for you and what is just the right amount that you can actually, you know, achieve. And I think it kind of speaks to, I think something I've seen from our side is a lot of times artists will also set their self a goal for success that is maybe not in line or aligned with what they actually can achieve or really want to achieve. They sort of see someone else's goal and they go, that's what I want to have. Like, I want to be famous and I want to go on tour and I want to make all this money, but maybe their actual goals of what they want will change as they start to learn more about themselves and about the business. So talking about them kind of trying to find what's the best goal for me to aim for, and just advice for kind of managing their careers. What advice do you, let me go to Thais. Do you have advice for artists? Oh, sorry.
I'm also a mom, and my child's having a meltdown, so I'm just waiting for her to stop crying.
Oh my gosh, no
So
problem.
sorry.
Hey, we are all real people here, right? We have lives. Well, so I kind of, I'll put this to anyone in the group, and Thais, if you, whenever you're ready, if you want to join in too. What advice do you have for artists that are looking to manage their own careers and create opportunities for themselves? Like maybe they're not ready yet for a team, or maybe a team is not necessarily something that they actually want just now. They want to do this on their own. They want to, you know, figure out how they can be successful as an independent. What kind of advice do you have for them on how they can best manage their careers? Anyone who would like to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I can start just what I was mentioning before. Oh no, Stephanie just got off. So I think, you know, again, knowing the business part, it's really important. Having a time management calendar, something that helps you go through all of this, because, you know, if you're gonna do it yourself, which is what in a lot of situations happens to a lot of artists, you know, you have to know that it's everything from booking, everything from making sure that you have time to rehearse your music, everything to make sure that, you know, if you hire musicians, that you have maybe an agreement, or, you know, like how much you're gonna be paid. Knowing that, you know, like in the United States, like making sure that you keep enough money for taxes at the end of the year, make, you know, all of those things that take time, but also knowing what are some of the types of negotiations that you should be doing, on having your own EPK, having your own image out there already, managing your social media. It's a lot. It can be done, but like perhaps, and I think what you were talking about, like in terms of the dreams, I think I want to tap into or mention that I think knowing what you don't want, it's also important. So, I got into a point where, like I made a list, like what are some of the things that I don't want? So that helps me go down to knowing what I truly want and saying it out loud. Like it
Yeah,
really
it keeps
helps
you
too.
accountable too.
Yeah, like keep you accountable, saying it out loud. Like what is it that you really want? Where are you going? And yeah, so
Yeah,
that's what I think.
that totally makes sense. Stephanie, do you have anything else to add that? Or I guess I could also ask you, what are maybe some essential elements that artists should focus on when they are building a more sustainable and marketable brand? What would you tell them?
I mean, I'm big on identifying brands that identify with you in order or have like the same vision as you. It helps also to fund what it is that you're doing. So let's say like a brand such as, uh like a Jim Beam, I'm just putting an example, right? That they're big on doing certain events that to highlight, different individuals and just different events that are going to be in line with like the brand of who you are, right? Because sometimes it's easy to grab money from brands, but it doesn't really make sense because it doesn't tie into like what you believe in or something like that. Or like if you don't drink, I don't think a liquor sponsor is going to really make sense. The money might be decent, but it might not really make sense because it doesn't really tie into what what you believe in. So it's
Sure.
important to like know how to choose those things as well. But just kind of like choosing things that are in line with you and what you believe in order to also like keep it genuine and authentic.
Mhm.
Because I think sometimes artists are thinking in the sense of like there's a certain globality to things, right? That every artist wants to be global, and once we put music on digital platforms, we already are a certain type of global. And I think it's really important to kind of hone that in and how it is that we're able to kind of tell that particular story with what we are, maintaining that brand identity and that authenticity, while at the same time getting with different brands that can that we feel that can tell the story for us and also put a bit of money in your pocket as well, which I think is really important, especially when looking for even like brand sponsorships that make sense with your brand identity.
Sure, yeah. Just making sure everything's aligned. Who you are, the people that you work with, the music that you're making. I mean, it makes sense. Tiéce, I think you were mentioning you're back now.
I'm back. Sorry.
So what advice do you have for artists that are looking to manage their own career, or like things that they should avoid? Maybe some common pitfalls that you find and things that they can try to avoid and steer clear of.
I would say just really understand the business. Now, you don't have to understand it super thoroughly to where the point, you could run a label. I think, because that sometimes can be a distraction. But I do think it's important to understand the business and to identify what bad practices are. So even when it comes to collaborating, how you market your music, how you monetize your music, where are you putting your music? Just, I think it's really important to understand what's a good practice, the standard practice versus what's bad practice, and try and avoid it. Because I do feel it's very easy to start something in a bad way, and it can manifest and it can grow, especially if you're trying to build a sustainable career. The way you plant your seeds and build those foundations are so important. So I would say for DIY artists and like independent artists, just really focus on making sure your foundations are set properly. signing up to, if you are on normal distribution, self-distribution companies, and you're uploading music, like make sure you are registered with companies like Songtrust. Make sure you're getting your royalties in different places. If you are collaborating, and like artists who work with me will know I go on and on, get your split sheets, get these things in order, understand why it's so important and why it will matter to you, because these things have a domino effect. If it's not just about putting out the music. If you do want to have a career in music, you're going to be interested in the sync licensing and all of that, and all of that is impacted by how you navigate your business as well. So I do think it is important to try and understand the business that you are handling, and not everyone has the luxury of having a manager or having a team behind them to start with. But even when it comes to having a manager, you shouldn't just rely, and I know this has been discussed already, but you shouldn't just rely on your manager knowing the business for you. You need to understand it, because will be situations maybe where you will need to manage your manager, at times as well.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's just that would be my kind of like very kind of motherly advice of make sure you do your work, like focus, make sure you understand the business and make sure that you can really navigate it.
As you were talking about that, the sort of pop in my head was like in understanding why it's important to own your copyright as well, because you were making a note about like making sure you know where your music's being played and like how it's being used, and that's definitely something that you want to know a little bit more about. When I take a publishing deal or I go with a label that has publishing services, like, am I able to still make choices about my copyright and where my song is being used? Do I still own my copyright? Just having that conversation with yourself too, of like, is that something that I want to do? Or is my goal to get to a traditional publisher and I'm okay, relinquishing some of that control? It's at least a good conversation to have early on. And then at various stages, I would assume throughout your career, because you might change again, like your goals might change. And I like your comment about don't just trust your manager, just don't trust your team. You should trust them, but you also want to be able to make informed decisions. And you can only do that if you also know at least a little bit of that information, so that you know if they're making the right decisions for you as well. I know we're getting towards the end, so I kind of we'll wrap this up. And I think a great way to wrap this up with is 2 final questions to everyone. So the first is just, we love making sure that everybody has access to resources and they know where to go for really good information on how to develop their career more. So do you all have at least one resource or tool that you recommend to help artists at any stage of their career? I'll start with Stephanie, if that's okay.
YouTube University.
Always good.
I mean, I think that it's really important to sign up to newsletters for like all of these entities. I'm big on, like, even myself, like, we're on this panel today, but I always say that I'm continuously learning. Like, I don't know it all. And I think that's something that's important, to just forever be a student of the game. I think that's one of the most important things, and to make sure that people understand that it's not too late to start, regardless if you're taking this career as quote unquote part-time or full-time. Like, it's not too late to start to get your things in order. There's certain entities that, yes, they have certain cutoff dates. So be in the know of that, but just be in this consistent state of learning, and don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of asking for help.
Yeah, absolutely. And a little note to everyone, the music industry changes, things change. So it's always good to keep up with what is changing and what is new. Velu, do you have any resources or tools that you typically recommend?
I mean, when it comes to digital marketing, like, there are tons of them, like Canva, Buffer, like making sure that the tools that you use. I mean, it can be others, but I think it depends on what you're looking for. There are tools out there that are more like content video editing, but or like digital promotion. I think just like finding what fits you best for maybe like ticketing. So I think and I'm in the same lines with Stephanie, just like learning. But I think like just knowing how to do research and finding what best fits you, because like what I'm using, it might not be what like it's gonna work for you. So choosing wisely. But I think, like I want to really focus on in-person resources. And I think creating community and networking, it's extremely important. And trying to save money, if you can, to attend one or two events where you can learn a little bit more about the music industry. Like there are so many. Like if you are in Washington DC, you have the DC Music Summit. If you're in New York, like you have the LAMC, which is specifically focused on Latin America. If you want to go to Europe, like WOMEX, which like is in my to-do list. I really want to go next year. This is my goal. California has events. Songtrust just this summer, you guys organized a panel here in Washington DC about royalties. And so like really finding those opportunities. And I think again, subscribing to newsletter, asking people like hey, are there any events that you recommend? Very important, so that you can maintain yourself informed and choose wisely what you want to spend your time on.
Yeah, absolutely. And also each other. If you learned something and it helped you, share it with someone else. You don't gatekeep that information. Tiéce, do you have any other resources or tools you recommend?
Well, honestly, I agree with both Stephanie and Velu. And I was actually going to say, like what Velu said, in person, I find great conferences. I think conferences are more expensive for music
Sure.
execs. I find the prices are crazy. They do tend to offer like good deals for artists, though, to kind of access. But I would say conferences, music conferences and events are a great way of learning, because they're always discussing current trends, what's happening, business side as well as the kind of music side for artists as well. So I would say try and attend as many of those, do networking. I like what I've said to some people is also don't be afraid to ask, if you see someone who works for a company that you're interested or you're curious by what they do, reach out, drop them an email. And if they respond, great. Some people don't always have the time to respond straight away. But, just ask people, be curious. And, like, again, like what Stephanie said, be online, look and, just be open to learning. I think, whatever, regardless of which level you're at in your career, whether you're established or you're emerging, I just think it's really important to kind of leverage online and in person. I'm a big fan of person though, definitely.
Yeah, and if you are in a place where maybe these types of events don't come to that often, but that there's people in your community that this would be helpful for, make those events, like put them on yourself. Or you're always welcome to reach out to Songtrust and let us know, and maybe we'll be able to bring some of our knowledge there, and some of our partners there as well. I love all of those. Education, in-person networking. Yes, everything is really important. So we're at time. I'll just kind of one last question. If anybody has one piece of advice, that last thing that you would give to artists, how do you take your career to the next level? We can kind of just do like quick popcorn answers. Stephanie, if we could start with you first, just what's that one piece of advice to get to the next level?
Elevate the creator in you.
Love it. Velu?
Believe in yourself.
Absolutely. I love that. And Tiéce?
Be consistent. Don't give up.
Amazing. Gems everywhere, all around. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for taking the time, all three of you, to share your experience and your wisdom with everyone. I hope everyone here got some gems to take away, either for your own career or if you're a manager or business, that you can pass on to your artists as well. Otherwise, thank you all, and keep an eye out for our next virtual event. Thank you, ladies, and I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your Monday.